Disability, art, community, pain, joy, glimmers. 4 BIPOC disabled queer Vancouver-based artists explore the healing power of witnessing through collaboration. These artists humbly and vulnerably bring you into their lives, into their homes to discuss their practices and experiences. They invite you into the creation and production of their live poetry music show, Glimmers. Watch as the show within the show comes to life. Sitting in my 3rd chakra, unraveling the unforgiveness my bowels are dying to let go of. Being sick is not a punishment, yet I seem to be addicted to punishing myself. Diseased by apologizing for my dis-ease. A lifetime of apologizing for being anything other than perfectly digestible. An apology that oppression and colonialism coerced me to begin writing, citing bulimia and anorexia as the rightful causes. Wrongfully, woefully bounding me to blame myself. Apologies engulfing me, embalming me, changing the course of how I relate to reality. Sorry, stoking ulcers, each one, each sorry, each worry I give away is another sore to soothe. It's more forgiveness to move that ignites my guts into the fiery hell of what it really feels like to face the fact that I am constantly apologizing for this existence. Could the mirror show me the exact spot filled with the most resistance I have to love myself? Is there a dance I can learn to stretch into and stay in the softest parts of me? I am still unteaching myself what I have been taught. My inner child is dreaming dreams we thought she forgot. I am reaching to revere that my hand's safety could be the meeting spot. I'm sitting in my 3rd chakra, knitting together all my living and all my forgiving into a blanket to keep me cozy. Supposedly, this healing thing, this self-forgiveness thing, it's unending. And I'm gonna have to do it again tomorrow. Sweet dreams, sweet forgiveness. I hope they both come true.
Well, here we are.
We are. Hi, baby.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for asking me to do this.
Thank you for saying yes.
Yeah. I think you are a naturally profound and insightful human being, so I'm excited to be able to lob a few questions in your direction and see what happens. Yeah, before we started rolling, you were talking about a sort of formative experience with the day program. Would you like to say more about why that experience was formative? Maybe what you learned about creating intentional community around yourself and disability and creativity, and maybe what that experience has done to contextualize an experience like this in terms of making this film. You can take it in any direction you want. Yeah.
I feel so emotional all of a sudden. Don't know why. I just need a minute. In 2017, I did a mental health outpatient day program at the Regina General Hospital. And yeah, like I mentioned, it changed my life. Earlier that year in 2017, I had attempted suicide and I was in the hospital for a little bit. And then I was released with this agreement that I would attend this day program. And I was very reluctant and resistant to attend, and I didn't have a ton of hope in it, to be honest. And just being there in this community setting, I think it was a huge piece of it, was the witnessing of other people who were going through similar and different things than I was, and the way that we were all showing up to tend to our own mental health and to support each other's journey. And yeah, it changed my life. It also gave me an opening back into art. I didn't have any sort of art practice before the day program. And in the day program, art was a pretty big part of the days. The structure of the day program was to go Monday to Friday every day for 6 weeks from 9 a.m. to 3:30. Yeah, so we spent 2 hours every day doing some sort of different art form. So yeah, like there was pottery, poetry, dancing, various things. Yeah, and it really gave me a moment to check in with myself and what I need. And in meeting these different people in the day program and seeing these different mirrors, it allowed me to start to question what kind of community I wanted to start building around myself, and even further to what kind of community did I need, especially to help sustain healthy mental health. And it still is learning, of course, but it really gave me this beautiful pause. And I think that was the other thing. I mean, the structure of the program, even though the structure of it is sort of, institutionalized in the sense that it's this Monday to Friday structure, it really goes against like capitalism in the sense that nothing was about what we produce. It was just all about healing and holding space.
I want to ask myself, what would it feel like to put it all down, to give it a rest?
How are you thinking about community building in Vancouver now, being the artist you are, with the particular priorities that you have creatively and spiritually? Like, what does community building look like for you now?
I feel emotional having you ask me that question right now, and especially hearing such a beautiful compliment, as I'm one of the most skilled community builders, when I'm sort of in this point of taking a little bit of a step back from community, at least from community tending being like my full-time job at this moment as I'm taking care of my health. And so it's interesting. I'm almost, in your question, I'm sort of questioning myself. Like, am I going to answer this question differently? Because I'm, kind of in this moment of pause and taking a step back. But yeah, I've done a lot of building when I got to Vancouver.
So this poem, this is my book. It's called Glimmers S1. Poetry and prose from a year living and loving queer. This beautiful cover photo is taken by my wife, Q. I'll tell you the story some other time.
And it was just based on putting my truth out there and seeing what came back, which is something that I think the day program also taught me, was to stand in my truth and to be truthful about what I need and what I can offer, especially in certain moments. And that's sort of the foot that I've led with. when I arrived in Vancouver, and I've been really intentional about trying to cast that energy and collect the people that I think align and also believe in the same future visionings that I do. I think that that's a big part of my building lately, is when I am doing that building or deepening in a relation and trying to learn more. I am really curious to know about a person's future vision and their visioning for what they want to call in, and how they believe the exchange of community, should flow in that river.
Can you say more about the relationship between your poetic practices or your creative practices and like this will to vulnerability and courage that you seem to have?
For me, disability has been a journey to honesty and vulnerability. For me personally, like being diagnosed on like the autism spectrum later in life, being diagnosed with a mental health disorder with BPD later in life, and then being diagnosed with Crohn's disease again later in life. Like, I think I had definitely been in denial about all of those things. And I think had I been honest with myself sooner, I might not have had so much tension and struggle within myself and just within life with certain things. I mean, there's a certain amount of suffrage in life that we must go through. But in those ways, when I look back, I was really dishonest with myself for a while that I really needed help. So once I could be honest about that something wasn't okay, then I was able to give myself this grace and an opening to be vulnerable. And then, that's when things shifted and changed. And so I think specifically sometimes with poetry, when I'm writing, especially in a moment when I'm not doing well and I'm really leaning into and looking to the poetry to be prescriptive, I can really sometimes feel now if I'm not being honest, if I'm not saying the thing, and then it makes me check in a little bit more with my body. I'm like, okay, what's going on physically? Like, am I in flare? Was, what had happened the day before? Or what's going on in my heart or my head, like double checking to make sure I took my medication, and just making sure that I'm coming to it honestly. And then once I can check in with myself and know that I'm being honest, I'm able to be vulnerable, and this poetic practice becomes prescriptive, no matter what I write.
Soul Stories, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Fanny, and I will be hosting you in Moral Space this evening.
I have a sense that like the relationship between your spiritual practices and your artistic practices is like super tight, Yeah. And so are there ways that being a performer, being a spoken word artist, complicates that vulnerability, like the visibility within your articulation of like where your body and spirit is at any given time?
Like, often, because I want to offer like truth. And so if I'm in a place where I feel like I can't say the truth, then I'm like, well, I should not speak at all. And then I get into this other weird, kind of state where I'm like, well, is it better to not speak at all, and all of these things. Not that I would say something untruthful, but but then as a spoken word artist, as more of a performer, then it's like, oh, I reach to this bag of poems that I have that I can kind of do anytime. That it's sort of, it's my universal truth, and it'll land, and I can reach to a place in myself, even if it's not maybe the most pressing thing I want to say, because that's also part of poetry, I believe, you know, is the pressing thing, and, you know, maybe what's of the moment, you know, even if that's not what's globally of the moment, but what's of the moment for you. And sometimes I'm still honestly shaky in what that truth is for me, even though that might be more what I want to speak on. Mm-hmm.
In my own life as a collaborator, the thing that I'm often seeking is like, who has the spiritual generosity to like be in space with me, you know, because like the generosity of spirit is what makes the creativity sustainable. And so like that's like my main priority as a collaborator. How would you talk about your priorities as a collaborator, like who you're keen to work with and why, and like what you're looking for when you say to yourself, we're going to create something sacred artistically together? Mm-hmm.
I think I'm seeking truth, and there's just this thing that happens, and this is going to sound a little maybe, you know, but there's just this thing that happens when I'm meeting somebody specifically creatively, and like I have this moment where I feel like I can see their little self and their elder self like all at one moment. And then like my little self, it's like this affirmation of just kind of trying to connect with this person and like seeing, you know, where the dust is falling. And so I know that is a little bit out there, but it sort of like creates this immediate trust. And usually it will like just draw me to kind of talk to that person or like reach out to them, and it kind of creates this very symbiotic, reciprocal relation, kind of right from the root, you know, right from the foundation. And then right after trust, what's really important to me is safety, because like you said, collaboration it really at its root is asking for help, you know? And so I need to make sure I feel safe enough with that person, especially, you know, when I think of collaboration, I think of it really realistically, and there's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be a moment when we're likely going to have a difference, you know, or there may be a conflict. And so I need to know that I'm safe enough there.
How are you thinking about what creates safety, or like, yeah, how do you move towards, obviously there's like an intuitive quality of like, I think this person is safe, but like in those moments of conflict, or in those moments where maybe you've misunderstood somebody or they've misunderstood you, what does safety look like? How do you cultivate that?
For me, it's a lot of curiosity, a lot of spiritual generosity as well, just sort of this, you know, this exchange of that spirituality and knowing that it's safe. And I think curiosity really cultivates that, like asking folks more about, you know, their story, what their goals, what they're working on, and not even those sorts of questions, even just how they want to be loved. Like, how do you usually best receive care, and what's a way that is a way that you like to show care that, you know, feels good for you. Because I think when we ask those questions within community, we kind of start to figure out the different things and the different gifts that people have, and then we can bring them all together and feast.
To what extent do you feel like your creativity is also about like play, curiosity, openness, or like the capacity to express something close to joy, you know, some of the time?
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm continually like learning and unlearning different things about myself, and teaching and reteaching and reparenting and, you know, all these things. And so my art practice changes within that, or how I'm writing, or what I want to write, or, it flows within this, becoming of of myself. But I learned so much more, not more, I just learned so much about myself when I am in community and having these opportunities to play. And so I want to, one, give that to other people, but I'm very curious to know all of me and who I'm supposed to be and how I can shine my gifts and spread them, So I love this container that collaboration creates. And honestly, most of the people that I reach out to collaborate with, like you, for example, are a great example. It's people that I deeply admire, that I have reverence for, that, I'm in love with their work. And because of the way I hold the work, I really truly believe it brings out the best in me and my work, Maybe that's selfish, and maybe it's community building, who knows? Who knows? But, and I just think it's spectacular. It's just so cool to watch different parts of people come out when they're interacting with each other. Another great example, especially in merging and building, when we're talking about community and growing our family trees, is my chosen family, Dia and Trophy, Kinfolk Nation, who live in Kelowna. They collaborated with me on a project in the fall, and I also brought in one of my very dear chosen family members, River Rowan Stone. And River had seen Kinfolk perform and, been a fan, but hadn't really had these interactions. And so bringing Dia and Trophy and River together was so amazing to watch, And then that brought out different parts of Dia, and that brought out different parts of River. And then that, of course, it's a ripple effect that, changes how Trophy and I are interacting. It's changing how the whole family is interacting. It's wonderful.
I love feeling your joy in this moment. Do you want to say more about Indie Fest and its role in this whole thing?
Yeah, so throughout the collaboration process leading up to Indie Fest, I was a little bit more sick than usual because it was leading up to an infusion. But we were really flexible in how we were able to get together to practice for the collaboration. And this process was a little bit different for me because through Indie Fest, we had some studio space, and Dia and Trophy were in Kelowna, and River was working. So I was able to access the space by myself and just really get into my body and do a lot of slow movement and listening to music and just sort of seeing what words were coming to me. The project that I was working on is called 33 Tongues of the Other, which is something that's in progress. I'm still working on, but what I'm envisioning for it to be one day is this poetic theater style show that is an exploration of my journey of figuring out if I want to have kids or not, sort of this exploration and question to community if having kids is something that we do want to do, and how can we maybe look at community structures where it is more like a village raising a kid, because I think it's really important to have people within community who don't have children to hold space in this other way and to be the ninis and the aunties and the uncles. And, that's something that I hold for myself, and that's really, really important to me. And I just want to start actually having more of those discussions of what could that look like, And I was a really lucky kid. I had a lot of access to adults who I had a lot of really interesting, experiences with that were super formative and that shaped me as a kid. And to be able to have, that experience, and it was often with an adult who didn't have a kid, and they had the time take me, and it's something that is really important to me. So like Dia and Trophy, who I was mentioning, they have a son, Glory, who's 5. And that's another thing that, you know, I loved within the collaboration process is like Glory just being there, like just, you know, being around. And it's like so cool to watch him sort of understand the boundaries of like, okay, should I like ask my mom for something yet? Should I not, you know? And just also like watching Dia be an artist and a mom, you know, that it's not, that we don't always have to like compartmentalize things. And it was, yeah, it just felt intergenerational and beautiful.
Is there a way in which what you do as a writer and a performer is also you teaching people the way you want to be seen and understood and loved? Yeah.
I think it's absolutely that. And also, I think it's like a bit of a rebellion, to be honest, of like, I am here and I take this space and like, I want you to see this, you know, to be 100% honest. Not in a rebellious way, but in a way where it's like deeply important to me as an arts educator to really like show up, you know, in this way where it's like, hey, yeah, I am Black and I'm queer and I'm disabled, you know, and I'm here, you know, because it gives permission. And so it's so important to me, you know, and it's just, and in that, I get to teach, specifically with, you know, arts education, I get to teach folks, and often young folks, young humans, this way that they can hold space for more types of people in community. I get to like show them this other way to be, this other way that they could also potentially build community, this other way that they could potentially dreamcast, future vision, and like really see themselves, you know? Like one of my students, they wrote a thank you note from themselves, obviously, at the end of the cohort. And one of the things that they said in it was just that meeting me and me saying to them that my pronouns are they, she, really empowered them to be like, my pronoun, you know, my pronouns are actually they, she. And it's like those little things. I'm like, oh, well, there, you know, it's just like a reminder. For me, honestly, it's a little reminder why I'm alive. So it feels really beautiful. And yeah, in all of that, I'm like, I think that I'm teaching people in the spaces that I'm walking into ways to otherly hold and build community.
That's beautiful.
On the next episode, we sit down with Q, the co-creator who spends most of their time behind the lens. They share how their Stevens-Johnson syndrome diagnosis has changed the way they view healing, community, and creativity. Q invites us behind the scenes as they develop the collaboration that is used for the opening of the Glimmers series.